Here's a story. A grim and scary story. It was 2000 to 2002. Three boys were friends. They were the impoverished ones living in such squalor. One was living in a 2-room, 1 bathroom, 1 living room, 1 kitchen shack. The other was living in a mobile home, an RV. And the other was living in a multi-story, a 3-story shack with multiple rooms, multiple bathrooms, 1 kitchen, 1 living room, and a couple of dilapidated man caves. All 3 came from an abusive household. One had been an only child and lived in the RV all his life. The other 2 lived in a ran-down dump of shacks closer in proximity to the downtown area. The 3 boys grew up and then moved in together as roommates in a 1-room, 1 bathroom, and a 1 kitchen, 1 living room apartment house. They were in their teens when they moved out. One found it easier to get a job because he sold the items that he bought from his 2 friends, and then used the very money to pay the son of the thrift store owner to let him and his friends work for the owner, because the thrift store was new in town. Upon seeing how things went, everybody in the entirety of the town of Portdale was put off kilter about the 3 boys living together. One by one, the 1 teenage boy and his 2 best friends, who came from identical backgrounds of poverty, one by one, they all were killed. One was killed in a mysterious Lover's Lane, driving up to Lover's Lane mishap. And the other died from being murdered, stabbed in the very restroom at the very gas station that he was going to. So the third friend lost the only friends he ever had and went stir crazy. He started luring in people. And I've seen this. The news reports reported that his apartment was full of stolen items. And on the back patio, every time that there was a squabble on the back patio on the second floor, he would push them off. And then they would land head first and snap in their necks on impact right in the middle of the second patio on the ground floor level below. Then he, under the false guise and intentions, was stating that he tried to find help, but they all flaked on him. And then very soon, the families of his friends sold both the mobile home and the shack, the ground level shack. But there was no one to witness the transfer of property, and no witnesses and no records of the transfer of properties being transferred into his name. He only lived in the 2-story apartment at the age of 13 and was too young to own any property. And he sold stolen property from a couple of vanishing, impoverished, dirt poor families. So he goes and forges their signatures from their bodies. All assets and ownership was forged and documented by him. Then he goes to the pet store, the pet shop. He meets a girl. He lures her up to the roof. And I've witnessed him killing multiple people. And when one of his friends, who did not get reported for his death, he walked literally 2 blocks down to the gas station and then dragged the gas station owner up on top of the roof of the museum, and then, as if he was a professional wrestler, hoisted the 7-foot tall owner of the gas station in a powerbomb move and dropped him, threw him down back first onto the concrete steps of the museum for not getting justice for what happened to his friend. His friend was alleged to have sexually assaulted the gas station owner's daughter, but he didn't even care. He started descending into more madness when he lured that one girl who happened to be working for the very pet shop up to the roof. Turns out she was the niece of the very gas station owner, and he pushed her off the roof. I saw this. This was back in 2003 when a couple of murders of his wound up shaking the community, the downtown district in Portdale. One mansion owner alongside me saw it all go down, saw him descending into more madness. So he got the portdale police. He got the portdale police's attention. His name was Josh Strugelmeyer. So Josh Strugelmeyer wound up going into the Portdale Hotel, and on top of the roof, he took the owner and tied up the owner, raped and killed his daughter, and threw his daughter off of the roof of the Portdale Hotel. Then he threw the owner off, following after his daughter, but he was heavily duct taped and tied and bound to a chair, muffled. The chair exploded, and the owner survived barely, looking for vengeance for what happened to his precious daughter. So he goes to the very bookstore and ends up befriending the daughter of the very bookstore until he burned the bookstore down with her inside it. This was a sick individual. He goes into the hardware store looking for a crowbar. That was his new signature weapon. So he goes and goes into the saloon, the flower shop that doubled as a bar, smashing everything, hooking people in the face with the said crowbar, murdering people. And then another bookstore, and then a deli store. This kid was sick and deranged. When a couple of mansion owners saw what was going down, he goes into the bank, causing all kinds of trouble, unruly, and then was thrown out. And then, as an act of penance, they terminated his account, which sent him into a flying rage. So he goes and ends up going after the bank owner, hooking him in the face with the crowbar, and then disappeared off into the night and skipped town. But here and there was various sites all around the high school all around the district where the high school is at, and another neighborhood. The police were still looking for him, still to this day. And it's 2017. So it's been years since 2003 since he's been around town. Some localists claimed that he was still in town, but hiding in plain sight. Upon him being shot by a local drug-dealing pimp, he was classified and documented as dead, but that didn't stop him. He still came back, and the community is still worried. The upper rich epsilonist of Portdale lived in the hills portion of Portdale, the hills neighborhood. They were worried that their gated community would have a psycho killing teenager that's now 19 years old and had spent a few years being dead. The high school he was in terminated his enrollment upon his death. And when he heard about that, a lot of new kids started coming in. Then he started targeting teenagers much younger than him. And he was stuck at 19 years of age upon his death. And with Josh Strugelmeyer, or in actualized cases, Josh Strugelmeyer or Maker. Either way, his last name was not important. What was important was Josh. He was from Portdale. his friends, Logan Huffman. Logan Huffman was pronounced dead. And when he screamed for help, Somebody help me! Somebody help me! I'm being stabbed in this restroom by this knife-wielding, drug-dealing pimp. But Logan Huffman's cries and pleas for help were ignored, and he dropped dead. The toilet and the sink filled with his blood, and the blood soaked the floor and the walls, and the mirror was left cracked as a reminder. That sent Josh over the limit. One of two of his only friends who have been killed. The other friend, Kenny Thomas. Kenny Thomas disappeared and was alleged to have been found dead in the public square fountain in 2005. He was a known vagrant and a rapist and a murderer and a philandering liar and a con artist at a young age. Portdale didn't feel bad for a couple of missing teenagers that turned up dead. The news reports were on the scene. Then newspapers and news channels were buzzing about it. Kids in the local high school that I was in, the Portdale High School, was talking about it as if it was a spooky local folklore and a local legend. But when Kenny and Logan came back from the dead to get vengeance on the behalf of their fallen comrade, Josh, and a local reporter slash doctor slash detective, almost like a Samuel Loomis archetypal figure in the social worker, mental hospital, and news reporting anchor and police department and detective circles. He psychoanalyzed the three teenage boys that were known to be known psychotics, serial killers, and rapists. Two were known to be rapists, but Josh was known to was way more known to be a serial killer than a rapist. His penchant for being a rapist was overshadowed by his penchant for being a psycho serial killer. Josh Strukelmeyer had been more known to be a troublemaking murderer and kept on coming back every single time his two best friends were messed with. The only way that they could have put them down for good is by getting them together after wiping out their horrible families. Their horrible families were the ones who brought up on the death of several young youths and several middle-aged and old-aged residents of Portdale. And I watched on the news, and I kept up on the news every day, and I was terrified. My name is Zach Steiner. Zach Steiner. "17, male." I watched these three teenagers I grew up in the same neighborhood with coming around, gutting bunch of kids like it was nothing. But anybody who's anybody got that got well within sight range of them was on their hit list. And anyone who got in anywhere near shape, in any way, shape, or form, in anywhere near the short range of them, was immediately dead up on sight the second time. My girlfriend, Arlena Gomez. Arlena Gomez was working for the local bookstore that just got rebuilt after the three teenage boys that were killed in one location, right in the middle, right in the very middle, on the very street. They were all sitting together at one table. They were all gunned down and their bodies burned after they were killed. And they were given no funeral and was given a unmarked burial. A shared unmarked burial. And the only thing that would mark it was one of those stupid Christian crosses that Arlena Gomez's aunt wound up liking so much. So, Portdale was in like a reprieved from the ongoing terrors And up on my 19th birthday, I married my girlfriend, Arlena Gomez, and we moved out to Oasis Creek. We lived there, and we now have a kid. And I told my son, our son, the horrors about what happened in Portdale back when I was growing up. The gangs, the drugs, the psycho serial killers, and occasional sightings of monstrous, nightmarish creatures that roamed the valley side of Portdale. I didn't know that our son was going to have a big old massive amounts of nightmares from it. Though me and Arlena's son ended up being without nightmares when he was going from his childhood years into his preteen years, and that's when it all stopped. All the nightmares I inflicted upon my own son, the same nightmares I lived through, but I was never a victim of, until I saw those 3 boys that were spectral ghosts in my dreams, haunted me day and night from my late teens, and all through my 20s I started having nightmares. The same nightmares I inflicted upon my own son had been inflicted upon me. But Arlena, she also suffered the same nightmares and saw the same grotesque, demonic, zombified faces of Kenny, Logan, and Josh. Portdale was never the same after their deaths, and I was traumatized. Now I'm in my 50s, and I also have a young daughter named Hannah. Hannah is about 25 years old, and my son is about 37. And that's how my life story ended, with my death and my wife's death. My wife superseded me in death, and then I preceded her in death. She died from a mental brain aneurysm, and then I died from a heart attack. My almost in his middle-age years son and my in her prime daughter was living their lives, and they did not have to grow up, namely Hannah did not have to grow up with the same trauma that me and Arlena had to grow up in. Portdale had been healing for a long time from the dark past of having 3 teenage serial killers in the early to mid 2000s. And in the late 2000s, early to mid to late 2010s. 20 years. Almost 20 years of it has went by. And the kids are still talking about the 3 teenage boys who ran around the whole neighborhood killing and getting revenge for one another, only to be dead for good this time. And they became a local ghost story, a scary bedtime story, ghost story type that had no physical consequences anymore because they were dead, killed, and grouped together and burned upon them being executed. They were enjoying their meals from a disgruntled fast food restaurant owner who hated the boys with a fiery passion and could not wait for their demise. And he relished every gunshot and every scream that those boys had uttered out. And those 3 boys went down screaming in a hail of gunfire from the law enforcement and the vigilante group in town. The vigilante group had done their one and done job to eradicate the 3 boys who came back from the dead just to wreak their vengeance and their horrible, evil actions and evil attitudes. The multi 3-story shack house was the only thing left standing. The RV was towed and sent to the scrapyard. The scrapyard crushed that very RV into a cube, a giant cube of what used to be a mobile home. And the shack, the ground level shack was torn down, and then a dock was placed. A dock was placed there with a landlocked lighthouse on top. But the tourist trap for horrific, truly horrific folklore that was used as a tourist attraction was the 3-story shack house. It was used as a tourist destination for those who loved Halloween. And that was on that very night is when the blood started soaking the very 3-story shack house and flooding it, as it was fake blood, but was told to the tourists that it was genuine blood, but they bought tickets to see it. And videos, real videos of the murders from the 3 boys was played, and their birth, life, and death again was played in one single cohesive narrative, as if it was like a movie being played, and the 3 boys were just unwilling actors in the revenge snuff film starring them 3 being the main victims / protagonists / antagonists, all in one. And every victim of theirs was treated like unwilling actors for the revenge snuff film. And that's what brought money back into Portdale. And the water tower was used as a mural for all of the victims of the 3 boys, either both raped, killed, or killed in general, or missing, were all immortalized. The 3 boys were the most hated in Portdale. I hope you enjoyed this creepypasta story.